What started as a party at Concord High School today ended in tears as students watching the launch learned about as hard a lesson as life offers. Steve Young was in Concord.
4, 3, 2, 1.
About 300 Concord High School students had gathered to watch the launch of their star social studies teacher. It took a minute to realize that what they were watching was a disaster.
Malfunction! Would you like to hear about it or not?
Students were dismissed about an hour later, still no.
Everybody's just like, they're all just falling apart, all the teachers and everything.
I don't ever want to go there. It's been proven unsafe.
Afterward, the principal said guidance counselors will try to help students anguished by the tragedy.
They're telling kids in particular that it's okay to feel bad about this. It's okay to be sorrowful. It's okay to cry.
McAuliffe was one of the most popular teachers at Concord High. Students followed her training every step of the way. The 37-year-old mother of two hoped to show by her example that space is a world open to anyone.
One of the things that I hope to bring back into the classroom is to make that connection with the students that they too are part of history, that the space program belongs to them.
We were with them on Saturday night, and her little girl said to me, "Is Mommy in space yet?" And I said, "No, not yet, pretty soon." And everybody was just so happy. Everybody was so thrilled that out of 11,000 teachers, Krista was the one that was selected.
There were mostly empty streets in Concord today and deserted shops as the town began to mourn.
I just watched it over again. It happened again. Very sad for the family and everybody.
One friend took a picture of Krista during a town celebration last summer. She picked it up just today, left with the photo and her greeting. Steve Young, CBS News, Concord.
Besides the symbolism of putting school teacher Krista McAuliffe aboard today's flight to be the first public citizen American civilian in space, to spread the wonder and to inspire and teach the young back on Earth on live television, this Challenger mission had other goals in keeping with its reusable space plane, space truck workhorse role. It was supposed to put up a $100 million satellite that would have become part of NASA's own shuttle communications network. It was also supposed to launch a $10 million payload to study Halley's Comet. Coming up next, Leslie Stahl has the latest on President Reagan's postponement of his State of the Union address, and Bob Simon will look at our space voyaging nation in a state of shock. First said that he was going to go ahead with tonight's scheduled State of the Union speech, then decided to put it off when the full dimension of the tragedy sank in. White House correspondent Leslie Stahl reports.
At the White House, the president watched a replay of the tragedy this morning in stunned silence. He said it was a horrible thing, a tremendous shock.
Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country.
The president postponed his upbeat State of the Union speech tonight for 1 week and sent Vice President Bush off to Cape Canaveral this afternoon to convey his feelings personally to the families. But despite his sorrow, the president said he's determined that the space program continue.
We don't hide our space program. We don't keep secrets and cover things up. We do it all up front and in public. That's the way freedom is, and we wouldn't change it for a minute. We'll continue our quest in space. There will be more shuttle flights and more shuttle crews, and yes, more volunteers, more civilians, more teachers in space. Nothing ends here.
It was Mr. Reagan's idea to send a teacher into space. Krista McAuliffe was his first thought when he heard the news this morning. The president called the entire crew courageous pioneers who gave their lives on the new frontier.
We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God.
Space Agency officials waited most of the day before saying anything, and when they did speak, it was only to say they won't say anything until and unless they know for sure what happened, what went wrong. David Martin reports the investigation, day one.
NASA doesn't know what happened, and neither do the makers of these white solid rocket boosters which helped lift the shuttle from the launch pad.
I don't believe there's sufficient evidence on the replays to be able to ascertain the nature of the problem.
Or the makers of the orange external fuel tank which carried 500,000 pounds of highly volatile liquid hydrogen and oxygen.
What we have is what you see on television, and it's very hard to tell anything from that.
While investigators search for answers, there is only speculation by informed observers about the apparent leak which touched off the giant fireball, dwarfing the remains of one of the 140-foot solid rocket boosters.
It appears that there were some burn-throughs and some flame leaks coming out, and once this extremely hot gas comes out, it could ignite an explosion of the external tank.
But another expert said that alone could not have caused the massive fireball.
The very large explosion that took place would have to have involved the propellants in this large tank.
The hydrogen and oxygen.
Hydrogen and oxygen in that tank.
What could have caused the external tank to fail like that? Could it have been unexpected weather conditions high in the atmosphere?
Winds aloft looked good. We didn't have any exceedances as far as our load indicators are concerned, to my knowledge, and we thought everything was in good shape for a launch this morning.
Could it have been the ice which coated the shuttle just hours before launch? Most observers say no, since the launch was delayed to allow the ice time to melt.
Right now, there are many more questions than answers. Until the investigators can come up with both answers and solutions, no more Americans will venture into space. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
In a moment, the U.S. space program under pressure. Was it too much pressure?